Hey everyone, it's Lynnea for LDRS Creative, and I'm going to be creating a card using the Puzzled in the Country bundle from HSN. These two stamp sets work together perfectly, or you can use them on their own. And I do have another video on the LDRS Creative YouTube channel using the stamp set on the right, the Puzzled Around Town stamps, to create a mountain, cabin, and lake scene. Today I'm going to be focusing primarily on the one on the left, Puzzled in the Country, and I'll be using those stamps together to create a large scene on a 5x7 card, which is something that a lot of you have asked for, are bigger card designs. So I'm going to show you how to use this stamp set pretty much as it is pictured, but don't forget that you can take these stamps and change around the scenery to create any kind of scene that you want. Here's how I like to use these stamp sets. I have a stamping platform. You don't need one, but for the technique I'm going to be using today, I found it very useful. I'm going to take these stamps as they are on the plastic carrier sheet and put them into my stamping platform. I'm going to make sure they're all puzzled together because I want to keep this same layout. Then I'll pick all of them up together, and I have a piece of 5x7 white cardstock. I'm going to add some adhesive to the back, position this so it's centered over all those scenes, and I'm actually going to close the bottom of my stamping platform and open that up. And that way I have my paper secured into my stamping platform, and I know exactly where these stamps are going to go. Now, if I want to, I can kind of smidge that paper over a little bit, which I did. I wanted to make sure this grass was more centered. In the end, it didn't really matter. I thought I might have a one-layer card, but I did end up trimming this down and layering this onto a card, so it didn't matter in the end. I'm going to start at the bottom of my scene with the grass, and I'm taking some LDRS Creative 4-leaf ink. This is pretty much your true Kelly green color. I stamped that, and before I removed it from the lid of my platform, I'm going to take the next two stamps in this scene and put them right in, literally puzzling them in how they go in this scene. Then I can remove that grass, and what I'm going to have left is that pine tree that's going to be on the right and the fence on the left. I'm going to stamp the fence with iced tea hybrid ink, so I'll just ink that up, and then I'll stamp that down. One of my tips for using silhouette stamps like this is to change the intensity of your inks by stamping once, twice, maybe even 3 times to kind of build up that color to get the intensity that you want. So I stamped this fence twice. Now this pine tree I'm going to ink up with olive branch ink. And I'm going to stamp this one, I think I did 3 or 4 times to really get the intensity that I wanted. Plus this is a large stamp, so in order to level out that ink, I stamped it a couple of times. Now again, before I remove those pieces, I want to do that tree that's going to end up over on the right, but I needed to add in that filler piece. So I added that in, then I removed it, and I'm going to take away the pine tree and the fence, and I'm going to stamp this leafy tree. And for that I'm going to use a brighter green ink. I'm going in with key lime pie ink, and I'm going to stamp this down, and I immediately didn't like how bright the green was. So I thought that I would just grab that same green I used on the grass, the 4-leaf, and just kind of dab some in here and there. And I stamped it and fell in love with the texture. And you can see here that I didn't press down well on my stamp because I didn't want it to be the full green intensity. And what happened was I got a splotchy ink, but it looks like a real tree. I'm going back to that middle. It's kind of just a filler piece. I don't think it's actually intended to be used as a stamp, but I wanted to see if I could create a sky. And I took LDR's Creative Marina Madness ink, and you can see how bright this ink. It's one of my favorite ink colors, but it was way too bright for what I wanted, but it was the correct shade, just the wrong intensity. So I'm going to just stamp it off. I'm inking it up. I'm coming in with a scrap piece of paper where you can see I actually tested the grass first, and I'm going to stamp off, and that's going to get the majority of the ink onto my scrap paper, and there's just a little bit of ink left so that I can transfer to my actual project. I did this a total of 3 times to build up the intensity of the ink, but you can see it is still not even near to the original color of the ink. This is another great technique when you're using silhouette stamps if you don't want to have a whole bunch of inks. Double stamp your inks, stamp off, or do that technique like I did with the tree where you're using 2 different colors. So here is my final panel. And you can see that the edges are not even. That's okay, I'll fix that later. Now I'm coming in with that Puzzled Around Town stamp set, and I was playing around with the different sizes of the people silhouettes, and I ended up with just this single image of the couple. And I'm kind of putting that right in the middle, and I'm going to stamp that with LDRS Creative Raven Hybrid ink. I used black so that it would really stand out on my scene, but you could use whatever color ink you want. Even using some embossing powders would work well because the embossing is going to sit on top of your inks, so you're going to be able to see that image really well. I'm going to give that ink just a minute to transfer, and here is my final stamped scene. It's really perfect, and I wanted to keep to the design that was on that stamp packaging, and I love how there's those white halos in between each of the images. It really makes them stand out. I trimmed down that panel, I matted it onto some white cardstock and then onto some olive colored cardstock to kind of match that pine tree that's on the right. And this finished card project is 5 by 7 inches. I popped up a sentiment right in the middle of that tree. This card is finished. It came together in just minutes, and you can customize these colors to represent any type of foliage that you want. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you again soon. Bye!